A and B are traveling together. Okay, so they go to this hotel. Now, for whatever reason, they get a room upgrade. Okay, so they get a much bigger room than whatever they booked. Okay, so let's say it's a huge room. Now, it's so big, it's so huge to the point where there are two refrigerators for whatever reason. Okay, so now B says, oh my God, there are two fridges, refrigerators. Okay, yeah, so for whatever reason, there are two fridges in the hotel room, two refrigerators. Okay, so let's first start with this. We have the number two. Okay, so we have the predicative adjective there are, and yes, whatever. Yeah, whenever you're saying there is or there isn't, whatever you are talking about is the subject. Okay, so we have two refrigerators. Okay, so 냉장고. 냉장고. Okay, so, well, yeah, we are using the number two. Now, there are, in large, typically three functions that numbers have, right? You could be either using numbers to count how many, or quantify, or label. Okay, so right now we're using number two for refrigerator. 냉장고. Is 냉장고 something that you can count by saying how many? Can you say something like, how many 냉장고s are there in this building? Or something like that. Can you do that? Or is it impossible? Exactly, yes. I would say that's something that you can do. Okay, so yeah, because, well, that means that we are using numbers to count how many. Okay, so if you are using numbers to count how many, you use native Korean numbers, right? If you're quantifying or labeling, then you use Sino numbers. But if you are counting how many, native Korean numbers. Okay, so now I need the number two in native Korean numbers. Okay, am I going to use two or 둘? Which one am I going to use? Am I going to use 두 or 둘? Exactly. Why is that? Because 하나, 둘, 셋, 넷, the separate red format of 1, 2, 3, 4 are used when you are just simply saying the word number. You're not actually using numbers for some kind of a function. You're not using them to count, quantify, or label either. Of course, there are rare exceptions, but that is usually the case. Yeah, for example, if I say, I just want to see your handwriting in, let's say, Spanish, whatever. So, can you just please write anything in Spanish? I just want to see your handwriting. Okay, so let's say I'm just going to say, just write anything. Just write 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, in that case, I am not asking you to use numbers to count. I am not asking you to use numbers to quantify or label anything. Okay, so in that case, we're just simply saying numbers. Okay, for the sake of saying numbers. So in that case, I would say 하나, 둘, 셋, 넷. But right now, no, I am using a number for a specific function, which is the count. So I'm going to say 두. Okay, so yeah. Now, however, so now we know how to say 두 and 냉장고, refrigerator, right? But once again, yes, in Korean, knowing how to say 두 and refrigerator is not enough to say two refrigerators, right? Okay, because when you're counting something, yes, you will need some kind of a counting unit. So let's go to page number 6. Okay, let's go to page number 6. Because at the bottom of page number 6, yes, you see the counting unit for electronics. Yes, like air conditioners or refrigerators, even phones, TVs, whatever. Okay, so yes, we're not saying two refrigerators. Yeah, you're going to say two 대s of refrigerators. Okay, so two 대s of ACs. Okay, so 대, counting unit for electronics. Okay, so we're going to say 2 days of 냉장고s. Okay? 냉장고 두 대. And then, yes, 있다. There is. However, I don't want its display form. I want its actual form in present tense. So I have to give it the 요 ending according to the rules of inflection round number 1, right? Okay, so 있어요. So 냉장고 2대 있어요. Okay, so now we have a sentence, right? Now we have a sentence. However, is this enough? No, because once again, yes, there always has to be, well, not always, but in most cases, there has to be nuance in a sentence because you are a person using a language as means of communication. Well, if that's the case, yes, usually you will have to convey some kind of nuance. So that's why I always say, yeah, you decide what to say, but the context decides how you will say it. Because according to the context situation that you are in, you must be thinking something, feeling something, and therefore that's where nuance comes from. Okay, so once again, now B, yeah, we did not originally book a room that is so big to the point where there are 2 냉장고s. We just got an upgrade for whatever reason. So, yeah, when B entered this gigantic room, B is very surprised by the fact that there are 2 refrigerators. Oh my god, 2? Okay, so how would you imbue that nuance? How would you imbue the nuance of viewing 2 as a big number? 2 refrigerators? I was not expecting that. Of course, I thought it would be 1. There would be 1, but there's 2. 2 is a big number for me in this situation because I was not expecting 2 냉장고s. How would you imbue that nuance? Okay. Exactly, yes. First, we can use the 이나 or 나 particle, right? Okay, yes, 이나 or 나 particle. So, yes, we can attach 이나 if whatever you are attaching it to ends with a consonant and 나 if it's a vowel, right? Okay, so whenever you have a number and some kind of a counting or quantifying unit, and you also want to attach some kind of a particle to it, then don't attach it to the number, give it to the unit. Okay, 두 대나. So there are in large 3 things that these particles can do. Well, and one of them is to indicate that the speaker is viewing a number as a big number, right? This is very useful information because is 2 absolutely a big number or a small number? I would say, well, it's not absolutely a big number and it's not absolutely a small number either. It depends. Because if I was expecting 5 and I get 2, then it's a small number. If I was expecting 0 or 1, but I get 2, now it's a big number. Okay, so it depends. So if someone gives me this particle, well, that's very useful information, right? Because now it tells me that you weren't expecting 2, you were expecting 1 or maybe 0. Okay, so 냉장고 2대나 있어요? 냉장고 2대나 있어요? 냉장고 2대나 있어요? Okay, so now, once again, is this going to be translated? Of course not. Because are you going to translate it into big? Does it mean number? Does it mean big? No, you don't translate these function words, these particles. Yeah, if you see a function word, you don't translate its meaning, you understand its function. So you don't ask the question, what does it mean? Does it mean number? So can I use it like this? I know 이나, numbers in Korean. Can I do that? No, of course not. It doesn't mean the word number. Okay, so whenever you have these particles, these function words, don't ask what does it mean, ask what does it do. Okay, so what's the translation of its meaning? That's not the question that you should ask. You should always ask what's the function of it? What is it doing? Yes, once again, it indicates that the speaker is viewing a number as a big number. Okay, so now What kind of a misunderstanding could happen if you don't know this concept? Yeah, I always see this happening so many times. You see two people, and based on their character, I feel like these two could have become good friends, maybe even best friends. But they end up not becoming friends, or sometimes they end up hating each other even. Okay. So, let's just say, for example, let's say ever since I was born, now, of course, when I was living in my parents' house, yeah, we always had, let's just say, three 냉장고s. For whatever reason, let's just say we had three 냉장고s. So I just grew up that way. So I thought that this was normal. Let's just say. So, or let's say two. So, or let's say three, just to practice more numbers. Ever since I was born, in my parents' house, there was always 냉장고 세대, 3 대s of 냉장고s. So I thought that this was normal. But let's say I made a friend. Now, for him, yeah, having one 냉장고 in one house is normal. So when he figures out that I have 3 냉장고s, let's say he asks this. 냉장고 세대나 있어요? Okay, so we are human beings, right? We are human beings. What does this feel like? Does it feel like he's just saying, hey, do you have 3 냉장고s? Because everybody does, right? I'm just checking. Does it feel like that? Or does it feel like, can you explain to me why you have 3 냉장고s? That's fascinating. Is it the former or latter? If you see a na here, that is. Exactly, it's the latter. Yeah. The addition of this one particle, yes, completely changed the dynamic of this conversation, right? Exactly. Yeah. The addition of this one syllable, this one particle, completely changed the dynamic of this conversation. Because if there is no na, then this person, who thinks that everyone has 3 tes of 냉장고s, could just take it as, oh, do you have 3 냉장고s? I'm just checking because everybody does. Yeah, so he could take it like that and just say yes. Yeah. 네. Now, what happens? Imagine that you are this person who asked the question, oh, you have 3 tes of 냉장고s? Oh, that's fascinating. Can you please explain to me why? Okay, so let's say that's the nuance that I conveyed, and the reaction that I get is, yes, I do. Now, that feels like, for him, it feels like, oh, you don't really want to talk, right? You don't really want to have a conversation with me, because the nuance that I gave off is, oh, you have 3 tes of 냉장고s? Wow, that's fascinating. Can you please explain to me why? And the answer is, yeah, I have 3 냉장고s. Yeah, I'm going to take it as a sign that says, oh, I don't really want to have this conversation with you. Now, once again, this is where misunderstandings happen. Now, yeah, I wanted to ask a question that will start a whole conversation, this person. But this person thought that this was just a just a straightforward, stiff and dry question because, let's say, this person doesn't understand what na is doing here. So he just thought that it's just 냉장고 세대 있어요? You have 3 refrigerators? I'm just checking. So that's why, yeah, he just said, yeah. Okay, so once again, this person wanted to start a whole conversation. This person thought that, oh, you're just asking me like a very obvious question just to check maybe. I guess that's the reason why you're asking me this. So I'm just going to say yeah. Okay, so once again, this person would say, oh, I thought that you didn't want to become friends with me. And this person would say, when did I say that? Why did you feel that? Okay, so understanding nuance is always the most important when it comes to using language as means of communication. Okay. So, let's say, yeah, we have 2 냉장고s in this hotel room. Not only do we have 2 냉장고s, in each 냉장고 there are, let's say, A says, oh yeah, of course A knows that there are 2 냉장고s in this room too. Yeah, A is looking around too. Oh yeah, there are 2 냉장고s, 2 tes of 냉장고s. So A is going to say there are 6 병 of 물, of water, as well, each. Okay, so this is how you will say it in Korean. Okay. So, now, the reason why I wrote 병 immediately, because let's go to page number 9. Let's go to page number 9. So, for example, yeah, when we were talking about counting units for electronics, 대. Now, this won't be really translated into English, right? I mean, of course, if you try to translate it the Korean way, yes, you can say 2 대 of ACs. Okay, but if not, the counting unit is a very foreign concept. It's a very Korean concept, right? Okay, so yeah, usually the counting unit itself is not actually used as a word on its own. It's just used as a counting unit. Okay, but sometimes you use actual words for counting units. Words that can function as its own word, but can also be used as a counting unit. That's what I mean by actual words being used as counting units. Page number 9. So page number 9 shows you a couple of examples, typical examples of actual words being used as counting units. For example, the counting unit for people, 명. Now, if 명 is not being used to count how many people, then it's not used at all then. Okay, so on its own that is. So, but 병 and 잔, bottle, a version of cup, they can be used. Yeah, they're just actual words. For example, I can use it as like, oh, I threw away the bottle, or this cup is pretty, or whatever. Okay, so when you're talking about drinks, yes, you would use actual words, usually, as counting units. So let's actually use the word bottle, 병. Okay, so there are 6 bottles of water as well, each. Okay, so we have in total 12 bottles of water, right? Anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't write there are. Okay, and then we have the subject, 6 bottles of water. And then, yes, if I'm going to say the 6 bottles of if I'm going to say 6 bottles of water as the subject, well then as well will become a part of the subject, right? Because unlike in English, as well in Korean is not going to be an independent standalone, right? It's a particle, therefore it has to be attached to some kind of a word that it modifies. Okay, and then each would also be a particle, therefore it will also be, yeah, attached to the word that it modifies. Okay, so now, I'm sorry. Oh no, actually, that's not the scenario that I came up with. Let's just do this. Each. Let's focus on particles that have something to do with numbers in this course. Okay, so let's say there are 6 병s, bottles of water each. Okay, so yeah, now bottle. We're counting bottle this time. Okay, so yeah, if you're actually using an actual word as a counting unit, then you're actually counting the counting unit. So yeah, once again, I'll explain that again. If the counting unit that you are using is an actual word, not just something that can only be used as a counting unit, if it's an actual word, then you're counting that actual word. You're counting bottles. Okay, so now is a bottle or bottles something that you can count by saying how many? Can you say, how many bottles do you need? How many bottles do we have? Can you say that? Exactly. Yeah. So I'm counting bottles. So therefore, I'm going to use native Korean numbers, right? Okay, so what was 6 in native Korean numbers? What was 6 in native Korean numbers? Yeah. 여섯, 여섯, 여섯. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say 물, water 6병. So 6 bottles of water. 6 bottles of water. 물 6병. And then 있다. There are 있다. But once again, I don't want its display form, so according to the rules of inflection route number 1, I will give it the 요 ending, 있어요. Now, when you want to use each, once again, each will be a particle. It is not an independent standalone, so it will be attached to the word that it modifies. Okay, so 물 6병씩, so 6 bottles each. Bottles of what? Of water. 물 6병씩 있어요. 물 6병씩 있어요. 물 6병씩 있어요. Okay, does that make sense? If it does, 넘어갈까요? Okay. So, now A is going to get another sentence. Now, we did come to this hotel room, but are we going to stay here? No, it's our first day checking in. So what we're going to do is we're just going to leave our stuff here and then we're going to go out to explore. Okay, so now because we have 12 bottles of water, 12 병s of 물, yeah, A is going to say, hey, yeah, put one in your bag so that we can drink water whenever we're thirsty today while we're going to places. Okay, going from place to place. Okay, so A says, hey, let's take a bottle each. Would you like to put one bottle, one 병 in your bag? Would you like to put one 병 in your bag? Okay, so of course I'm talking to you and I'm going to take the verb put and I'm going to give it the would like to ending, right? Would like to put the verb and of course the object one bottle. Now the context is making water a little bit too obvious now, so I'm going to omit water now. And of course I'm talking about your bag. I already put one in mine, and if I'm handing you a bottle and I'm saying, would you like to put one bottle in bag? Of course I'm talking about your bag. I already put mine in my bag. Okay, so location. Because the bottle has to travel from the refrigerator into the bag, right? Okay, so let's first start with in bag, 가방. Okay, so yeah, when you're placing in, on, at with some kind of a location word, you have two options, right? 에서 or 에. Okay, so which one are you going to use? Is it going to be 가방에서 or 가방에? Okay, let's take a look. So, once again, now, there are a lot of ways of explaining this concept. Now, especially a lot of ways of explaining it designed by universities. But once again, yes, I don't want to say it in a too much of a blatant way, but yes, a lot of them are shortcuts. Okay, so yes, there are a lot of ways of explaining this concept, but I believe that most of them lead you to too many confusions and too many exceptions. So I explain it this way, right? Take a look at the verb. You have the verb put, and always ask yourself, did something get to the location by doing the verb? If the answer is yes, then 에. If the answer is no, then 에서. Okay, so yeah, that's why I a lot of times use this use this example, right? I sleep in the living room. Okay, so in this case, yeah, I have in, on, at with a location word, living room. Now, I'm gonna do the same thing. Did I get to the living room by sleeping? No, right? Did I get to the living room by sleeping? Is it like I fall asleep, and for whatever reason, if I fall asleep, my body is automatically teleported into the living room? Of course not. So that would be awesome, right? Whenever you're tired, that would be awesome. But unfortunately, that's not the case, right? That would be awesome, right? Now that I think of it. Anyway, that's not the case. So, yeah, I'm going to ask myself the question, did something get to the location by doing the verb? If the answer is yes, 에. If the answer is no, 에서. So that's why you say 거실에서 자요. Okay, that would be awesome though. Okay, so now, however, in this case, the answer would be yes, because if the bottle will travel all the way into the bag from the refrigerator, it travels all the way to the inside of this bag, yeah, then it's going to get there by being put there. So yes, it will get there by doing the verb, by B putting it there. Because if not, how else will it get there? If B will not put it there, will the bottle say, well, I don't need you anyway. I can get there myself. Can the bottle say that? Can the bottle say, oh, I'm not going to get to the bag by being put there. I don't have to. I have other means of getting there. I'll just walk there. Can the bottle do this? I don't need you. The bottle will say, I'll just go there by walking. No, of course not. The bottle will get to the inside of the bag by being put there. So the answer is yes. Okay, so we're going to say 가방에. 가방에. And then one bottle. One bottle. Okay, so once again, we're counting something because a bottle is something that you can count by saying how many. Once again, which version of one will we use? Yeah, we're going to use native Korean numbers because we're counting 한 and we're not going to use 하나 right now, right? Okay, so 한 병. 가방에 한 병. So as a way of saying, would you like to put a bottle in your bag? 가방에 한 병. And then, which version of put will you use? There are a lot of versions of put, like 넣다. Okay, right now, I have to use 넣다, right? Because 넣다 is a specific version of put that you use when you're putting something inside of something, which means that you cannot use it when you're putting something on top of something, behind something, underneath something, next to something. No, you can only use 넣다 as put when you're putting something inside of something. Okay, right now, yeah, I am putting it in the bag. I'm not putting it on the bag or behind the bag. Okay, so I can use 넣다, but of course I don't want its display form. I don't want the ta ending because what is a display form? Literally, it's just a drawing. It means nothing, therefore it does nothing. Okay, so I want the would like to ending. So according to the rules of inflection route number 2, I'm going to place and then give it the 레요 ending. Okay, so I'm going to say 가방에 한 병 넣을래요? 가방에 한 병 넣을래요? 가방에 한 병 넣을래요? Would you like to put a bottle in your bag? Okay, does that make sense? If it does, 넘어갈까요? Should we move on? Okay. So, some of you sparkles who have been attending these lives for a long time might be already guessing B's answer. B is going to answer this question. Do you think B is going to say yes or no? Yeah, a lot of you sparkles who have already been attending these lives, you already know A and B's characters, right? Do you think B is going to say yes, be cooperative, or say no? B, exactly. B usually is not that cooperative, right? Exactly. Okay, yeah, so Yeah, exactly. B is gonna say no. Because, yeah, let's say B already has a little bag that he will carry around today, and B feels like it's already very heavy. He put a whole bunch of stuff in the bag, so he does not want to add any items into the bag. He feels like it's already too heavy. So B is going to say, it is already about 5. And then, yes, when you're talking about weight, yes, in Korean, the quantifying unit that you would use is kilograms. Not just kilograms, but usually kilograms. Okay, and yeah, as an abbreviation for convenience, you will use kilo, kilo, kilo. So kilograms. Okay, so it just says the first half of the word just for convenience, kilo. Okay, so once again, always look at the counting unit or quantifying unit that you're looking at, the unit that you have, and ask yourself the question, what is this for? Yes, what is kilogram for? Like pounds for? It's for weight, right? Now, is weight something that you count by saying how many? Do you say, how many weights is your bag? Do you say that? How many weights is your bag? Or do you say, how heavy is your bag? So I would say, yeah, weight is not something that you can count by saying how many, which tells you that you're not counting. You're not using numbers to count. You're using numbers to quantify then. Okay, usually quantify. Exactly. And because we are quantifying, we are not going to use native Korean numbers. We're going to use Sino numbers. Okay, so yes, let's say 5. Oh, right? Oh, oh. So once again, yes. Take a look at always the counting or quantifying unit that you're looking at and ask yourself, what is this for? Once again, kilogram for weight. Now, is weight something that I can count by saying how many? How many weights is your bag? No, which tells you that I'm not counting, I'm usually quantifying then. So, Sino numbers. Okay, so now we have the subject, and I always say this, right? Any kind of a unit, a counting, quantifying unit is a noun. Okay, so we have two nouns then, right? So when you're saying a noun is a noun, including pronouns, yeah, what do you do? So if you're saying a noun is a noun, this is a pen, I am a person. So when you're saying a noun is a noun, then you're saying the subject is the subject complement. Okay, so yeah, the subject it will be obvious, so it's going to be omitted, right? Of course, I'm talking about my bag. Okay, so yes, the subject complement 오 and then 키로. But a 한국어 문장, a Korean sentence, can never end with a subject complement, right? It always needs an ending mark. Okay, so of course there are a whole bunch of versions of ending marks, but the most basic and the most useful versions, yes, in this case, 에요. If the subject complement ends with a consonant, the pronunciation of it, I would have attached 이에요, right? But because it ends with the vowel, 에요. And once again, yes, when you are using the vowel version, 에요, yes, you do have a double vowel that looks like 예, but never actually pronounce the Y sound. Just pronounce it as if it is 에. Okay, so now, what could happen if someone says, well, it's technically yeah, so I refuse to say it like this. I'm going to say it like this. Well, then it kind of feels like in English, someone saying, I refuse to say comfortable. I see an O there, so I am going to say comfortable. I refuse to say comfortable. It's comfortable. Or I refuse to say thought. I refuse to do that. Yeah. I'm not blind. I see a G there and I see an H there. So I refuse to do that. I'm going to say thoked or whatever. Okay, so that's what it could feel like. Okay, so we have 5kg예요. Now, we did talk about, yeah, well, there are more ways of doing it, but the big three ways of placing about in front of a number, right? So when you have some kind of a number and counting unit, there were in large 3 ways, right? 3 ways that you can use in real Korean, not poetic Korean, or not soldier Korean, or not business Korean, or not exam Korean. In real spoken Korean, yes, method number 1, 한. So to place 한 in front of the number and counting unit. Number 2, yeah, placing 정도 behind it. And number 3, 쯤 or 쯤. Sorry. Okay, 쯤 or 쯤. So now these 3 methods would be the versions that you can actually use. Yeah, we're not learning poetic Korean, right? We're not learning textbook poetic Korean here. Okay, so only stick to these 3 versions for now. Okay, so now 쯤, I'll talk about method number 3, 쯤 and 쯤. Now, there was a little bit of a difference here, right? Yeah, they will be playing the role of about when you have some kind of a number, but 쯤 is used when that number has something to do with time. If you want to say something like, we need about 30 minutes. Can you buy us about 30 minutes? Now, that 30 is being used for time. But if I say, we need about 30 people, now, I'm not talking about time, then that's 쯤. Okay. Anyway, you can use method number 1, 2, or 3. But once again, yeah, this literally comes down to habit. You could sometimes run into people who just like using 2 at the same time. 한 and one of these 2 at the same time. So I can say 한 5kg예요. But I can also say 한 5kg 정도예요. Okay, I could do that. It literally comes down to habit. Or I can say 한 5kg쯤이에요. Okay. But right now, I'm just going to use 한. So, 한 5kg예요. Okay, so we have about. So when you're placing about with a number and a unit, yeah, do not separate it when it comes to part of speech. They will all together, in this case, be the subject complement. And then let's just place the adverb already in front of it. Okay, so you at least have to know 2 versions of already, right? Yeah, so there's 벌써 and there's 이미. Okay, so it depends. It depends, right? So 벌써 is when the speaker is surprised and 이미 is when the speaker is not surprised. Okay, so let's say B is not surprised. Yeah, B already knew that his bag was heavy. He was holding it literally. So B's not going to be surprised. He's going to say, oh no, I don't have room for another bottle of water to go into my bag. It's already too heavy. So we're going to say 이미. So B is going to say, oh no, no, no. 이미 한 5kg예요. 이미 한 5kg예요. Okay, does that make sense? If it does, 넘어갈까요? Should we move on? Okay, okay. Gungpenis, thank you, thank you. Okay, so now, once again, if I were to remind you of the 문맥, the context, yeah, A was saying, hey, put a bottle of water in your bag so that you can drink water whenever you're thirsty today. Okay, so now B says, no, 이미 한 5kg예요. So now the reason why A thinks that it's a good idea to keep a bottle of water in your bag is because, yeah, B is going to say, well, they say that as a human being, you have to drink two. Okay, so this time we're going to use a unit for volume, especially when you're talking about liquid capacity. Okay, so let's go to page number. Oops, I'm sorry. Page number 12. Okay, so you have volume, especially when you're talking about liquid capacity. So you don't use gallon in Korean, you use, liters. Okay, so, of course, for a significant amount, liter. Okay, significant volume. Okay, so 2 liters of water of whatever. Okay, so liter, what is this unit for? It's for volume. Once again, yeah, you don't say, yeah, how many volumes is that water? Yeah, when you see like a bottle of water, you don't say how many volumes is that water? You don't say that, right? Okay, so therefore you are quantifying. That's why we're going to use sino numbers. So we're quantifying volume. Okay. So liter. So once again, always take a look at the unit and ask an extra question. Don't stop at what's the unit. Ask an extra question. What is this for? It's for volume. Do I count volume by saying how many? How many volumes is that milk? No. Okay, so we're quantifying. Okay, so you have to drink 2 liter in 1 day. Okay, we're not going to say a day in Korean. You're going to say in 1 day. Okay, so of course I'm talking to you. Have to drink the verb and 2 liters, of course, of water. It's too obvious, therefore I'm going to omit it. And in 1 day, yes, time. Okay, so we have 2 numbers. However, we're not actually going to be using 2 numbers because now 7 days is a week, right? Okay, so actually, so you don't actually have to say like 7 days. You don't have to use the number 7 and the word days, right? You could, but you don't have to. You can say a week, right? Okay, so you could say, do we have to place the number 1 and say the word day? You can do that, but usually you would just use a word that means 1 day, 하루. And 2 days, 이틀. 이틀. So 2 days, yeah, this one word means 2 days at the same time. 3 days, 사흘. 사흘. 4 days, 나흘. 5 days, 닷새. 6 days, 엿새. The list goes on and on. However, now there's good news. Don't worry. Don't worry. You could say, oh my God, I have to memorize all of these. Don't worry. Of course, it's good to know them, but you're pretty much safe with these 2. Starting from 3 days, yeah, people won't really use these unique words that often. Starting from 3 days, you can actually just place the number 3 and say the word day. So, 3, and then 1. Okay, so once again, I'm using a number for time. Yeah, day, time. I'm talking about time, right? And yes, now you don't say how many time do we have? You don't say that, so therefore you're quantifying, you're not counting. That's why I'm going to use 3, but in sino numbers. 3 days, 3일. Okay, so of course, this is not the only way you say day, right? That's why I always say when you're learning Korean, that's always what you have to keep in mind. Whenever you learn something, you can't just say, oh, this is day, thank you, goodbye. No, you always have to say, okay, I'm pretty sure that this is a version of day. So I'm sure that if I'm in a different situation context, there must be a different way of saying it. Anyway, that's not the main point right now. Yeah, 하루, 이틀, 1 day, 2 days. So you can't actually say the number and the word day, a version of it starting from 3 days. But when you're talking about a day or 2 days, people would usually not do that and just use a unique word that means a day and 2 days at the same time. Does that make sense? If it does, 계속할까요? Should we continue? Okay. So I'm just going to say a day, 하루, and then in. can play the role of in when it's modifying a time word, right? 하루에. And then, yeah, or let's actually say about. Once again, let's use about. A little while ago, we talked about how to say about with some kind of a number and counting unit, right? About 2 liters. Okay, so once again, liter. You use it for volume. I'm not going to say how many volumes is that water, so I'm not going to say that. So I'm going to say 2, but in sino numbers. Okay, so E, right? E. And then liter. So this time, yeah, we talked about the 3 ways of placing about with some kind of a number and counting unit. A little while ago, I used 한. This time, for practice, I'm going to use a different method. I'm going to use 정도. So the 3 methods that we talked about today, they are all versions that you can use. So you can just pick one and stick with it. However, you do have to know all of them because you never know which version the person you're talking to will use. Okay, so 하루에 2리터 정도, 하루에 2리터 정도, and then 마시다. Of course, I don't want its display form, so according to the rules of inflection route number 1, I'm going to give it the have to ending, right? So 마셔야 돼요. Okay, so 마셔야 돼요, according to the rules of inflection route number 1. Okay. 감사합니다. Okay, so yeah, now we have the whole 문장 천천히 읽을게요. 하루에 2리터 정도 마셔야 돼요. 하루에 2리터 정도 마셔야 돼요. 하루에 2리터 정도 마셔야 돼요. Okay, and yeah, I always say if you have an H sound somewhere in the middle of a word, it's going to be practically silent. But once again, in this case, it's not somewhere in the middle of a word, it's at the very start. So yes, I am going to clearly give it an H sound. I'm not going to say 하루에, I'm going to say 하루에. 하루에 2리터 정도 마셔야 돼요. Okay, does that make sense? If it does, 넘어갈까요? Should we move on? Okay. So, yeah, that was actually it for today, the 7th class. Now, tomorrow in the last class, yeah, all of you have done so well, have been keeping up with patience so well. So, yeah, I would like to first say thank you for that. None of this would be possible without your patience and studious attitude. Okay, now, in tomorrow's last class, what we're going to do is we're going to try to use some counting or quantifying units that we didn't until now, so that, yeah, we would be using at least most of them at least once each.